Well, sometimes I feel like our Revised Common Lectionary, the instrument that chooses the readings that we read Sunday after Sunday, is not too unlike throwing the I Ching or doing a tarot card reading, because you never know what you're going to get. I certainly never would have chosen the readings we have today, because I'm afraid they all speak unmistakably about the dangers of being too comfortable. And I just love being comfortable. But these are the texts we have for today. This past week, as many of you know, I was at a 3-day clergy retreat up at Bishop's Ranch. And I certainly felt I was in the realm of the rich man. The fine wine was flowing, and you literally couldn't turn around without knocking over a big bowl of chocolate truffles. There was lots of beef and lamb, and all this was understandable because the theme of the retreat was health and wellness. Well, there were workshops on everything from Zumba to family constellation. There were hikes and art lessons and flower arranging and dancing and singing and nutrition and spiritual direction. Finally, on the 3rd day, it was time for the bishop's address to the clergy. This was the high point for me, it really was. This amazing soliloquy was brilliant, wide-ranging, and revelatory of a divinely wandering mind. He had a really wonderful setup, too. They had found somewhere on YouTube a picture of a crackling fire that went on for 2 hours, and they projected this on a huge screen to his left. He had a floor lamp, and then in case the FDR references weren't clear enough, he had a little Afghan on his lap, as he said. Bishop Mark began talking about genograms, those fascinating diagrams of your past history, your past family history. And he told us how important he thought it was for young couples who are counseling for marriage to look at their genograms and see what red flags might be in their family history, like suicide or alcoholism, or perhaps a sudden desertion. And then he seemed to imply that he wished he had done a genogram on the bishops of California before he had come to this particular post. Bishop Pike, the 4th Bishop of California, died broken-hearted in the desert of Jerusalem after his son had died of an overdose, and after the House of Bishops had censured him for heresy because he did not believe in the virgin birth. His successor, Bishop Myers, number 5, died of complications from alcoholism, his body so ravaged that his veins had collapsed. And then Bishop Mark told us that Bishop Swing had said to him that he retired because he didn't want to leave feet first. So with all these facts, Bishop Mark emphasized that health and wellness was very important to him. And as he talked further, he told us that he extended this to the health and the wellness of planet Earth. What, I then wondered, as I listened to him, would be the genogram of planet Earth? Does she suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome from the Big Bang? Are the effects of a cold and remote universe still lingering? No, of course not. The genogram of Mother Earth has been reversed so that what Mother Earth suffers from is her children's addiction to comfort. I remember, maybe some of you do too, one of the very first events that Bishop Mark did was something called the Cosmic Walk. This is a beautiful and graceful liturgical expression of the history of the universe, all 4 billion years of it. Now, Bishop Mark, like my own father, was a soil scientist. And like my father, he is a great and evangelical lover of planet Earth. Well, after I saw the Cosmic Walk, I realized with great joy, and I mean this in the most positive possible sense, that who we had as a brand new bishop was a great big old hippie. The Cosmic Walk is a ritual that's best done out of doors, and you use a very, very long rope and you form a huge spiral out on the ground. This represents the entire 14 billion years of our cosmic and evolutionary journey. It begins in the very middle with the Big Bang, here called the Great Flaring Forth. There's a large candle placed there. And then with every succeeding stage, a votive candle is lit and a beautiful text is written. A walker slowly proceeds around the whole spiral to mark these places. Here's a few examples of stages in the journey. 4.3 billion years ago, The great bombardment creates the Earth-Moon dance. For tens of millions of years, Earth sweeps around Sun, gathering unto herself some of the dispersed body of our grandmother supernova, swelling as she does. During this time, a large planetoid crashes into Earth. Some of the outer layers of the molten Earth and planetoids splash out into Earth's orbit, solidifying into Moon. Eventually, the cataclysms of birth are over, and Earth and Moon begin to cool. Their relationship with each other and Sun will choreograph the exquisite dance of life. Much later, 540 million years ago, the first organism with eyes emerges. Earth sees itself for the first time and is dazzled. Then, 40 years ago, Earth, for the very first time, is seen as a small blue-green sphere from space. Well, quite coincidentally, when I got home from the retreat, my husband had a program on that struck us both very deeply. It was a documentary about the astronauts who had first seen Earth from space. If they had a religious bent, they felt it as a deeply religious experience. If they didn't, they just said it was an experience that changed their lives forever. Then we saw a wonderful shot of the Earth, hanging there in space, blue marbled and fragile, and it was so beautiful, it brought us both to tears. This gorgeous, magical oasis in the midst of space is all we have, and everything dear to us now or that has ever been is on this tiny planet. And we have managed to put it in peril. We put it at peril because we want, at any cost, to be comfortable. After a while, my daughter came home, and I asked her how she felt about global warming. She said, to my surprise, that she was very optimistic. Technology will save us, she said. Had I seen the new Tesla electric cars? And did I know that cell phone manufacturers and computer manufacturers are trying to make things with different components so that one thing fails, you can just replace it instead of replacing the whole thing? She felt sure that technology, the very thing that I thought had damned us, would bring us salvation. And she said, hadn't I heard of Dr. Sugata Mitra? Here was a man who'd been experimenting with technology to find out how even the most disadvantaged, even the most impoverished, could learn. He did an amazing experiment. He had an apartment in a really distressed part of town, and he cut a hole in the exterior wall, and he stuck a computer in there. And then he waited and watched as the impoverished children came and not only learned, taught themselves how to use the computer, but taught themselves English so that they could use it better. He further experimented by bringing laptops to small African villages with similar results. He came to the following conclusion. You only need 3 things in order to learn: an intriguing question, opportunity, and encouragement. Our reading from Amos describes with derision the habits of the wealthy and idle and the very comfortable. Those who lounge on beds of inlaid ivory, who eat the food of the very rich, lambs and calves, while the poor subsist on barley and maybe a scrap of meat. They drink not cups but bowls of fine wine and use the most expensive oils to anoint themselves. They never think about their coming ruin, never think about the ruin of the neighboring northern kingdom, already seized by the Assyrians, already suffering. The letter to Timothy is even more specific. Those who want to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. But as for you, man of God, shun all this. Pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, gentleness. And finally, our gospel is even more frightening. In this parable, the rich and the poor trade places. The rich man is merely buried, while Lazarus is carried away by angels to the bosom of Abraham. No pleading can get him even a drop of water, let alone a warning for his brothers. Well, we'll have to admit that like the 5 brothers of the rich man, we've been amply warned. We've been warned about a very uncomfortable and inconvenient truth. There may possibly come a time when we will suffer from our comforts, and when we will end up in a place that is a little warm for our comfort. But if Dr. Sugata Mitra is right, then maybe we have everything we need to learn what we so desperately need to learn. We certainly have a very intriguing question before us. We certainly have the opportunity to learn what we need to do. Perhaps it's only the third requirement that we lack, that we love each other and encourage each other to try to let go of some of our dangerous comforts, to help each other let go of our pessimism and let ourselves be carried away by our better angels to a present kingdom of heaven, where we are humbler, more generous stewards of Mother Earth. Amen.